My grandfather built his house with his own hands. 43 years he lived in it. He raised my mother there, watched her get married in the backyard, and after my grandmother passed, he kept every Sunday dinner alive in that kitchen like a ritual nobody dared to interrupt. He told me once, when I was maybe 12, sitting on the porch steps while he fixed a loose railing, that the house would be mine someday. Not because I was the oldest, not because I needed it most, but because I was the one who showed up. I showed up for every single thing. I was there when he had his knee surgery and couldn't drive for 6 weeks. I rearranged my entire work schedule to take him to physical therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I was there when the furnace broke in January and he was too proud to call anyone. I found him wrapped in 3 blankets watching the evening news like everything was fine, and I sat on hold with the repair company for 40 minutes while he insisted he was comfortable. I was there for the lawn, for the grocery runs, for the tax forms he found confusing after my grandmother had always handled them. I was there so consistently that my husband used to joke that I had 2 homes and one of them had better pie. My brother was not there. My brother lived 40 minutes away, had 2 kids in a big house, drove a truck that cost more than my first 2 cars combined, and called our grandfather on Christmas and Father's Day, sometimes both, and considered that sufficient. He was not a bad person in the obvious way. He didn't yell. He wasn't cruel. He was just absent in the specific, comfortable way that people are when they know someone else will handle things, and nobody forces them to reckon with it. My mother knew this. She watched me do all of it for years. She thanked me for it, regularly, in the warm, slightly distracted way people thank someone they've come to rely on without fully accounting for the cost. So when she sat me down at her kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon in March and told me that she had spoken with her attorney and updated the estate plan, I assumed she was telling me something I already knew was coming. I set down my coffee. I folded my hands. I smiled, ready to nod. She said the house was going to my brother. I didn't move for a moment. I think I blinked. She said it the way someone says something they've rehearsed, with the cadence of a decision, not a conversation. She said my brother had a family, 3 people depending on him. She said the kids needed stability, that the house was large enough for them to grow into, that it made practical sense. She said it like she was reading from a document she'd already signed, which, I would later learn, she essentially was. I asked her what any of this had to do with the fact that she had told me explicitly 3 years ago that the house would be mine. She said things change. I asked her when they had changed, and she looked at the table and said my brother had been going through a difficult time financially, and that family helps family. I said, quietly, that I was also family. She said she knew that. She said I was strong. She said I would be fine. I want you to understand something about that phrase, you'll be fine, when it's used by someone who is about to take something from you. It is not comfort. It is permission. Permission they're giving themselves, not you. It's a way of saying, your feelings about this are not the obstacle. You are going to absorb this, and I am going to let you, and we are both going to call that strength. I did not cry. I drove home with both hands on the wheel, listening to nothing, and I did not cry. My husband was in the kitchen when I got home. He was standing at the counter going through mail, still in his work clothes because he'd had a late meeting, tie loosened. He looked up when I walked in, and he has known me long enough that he put the mail down immediately. I told him what my mother had said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked me if I wanted dinner first or if I wanted to talk first. I said I didn't know. He made dinner. We talked while he cooked, and I sat at the kitchen island and laid out everything my mother had said, every word, the exact phrasing she'd used, the way she'd looked at the table. My husband listened the way he always listens, completely, without interrupting, without offering a solution before I'd finished saying the problem. When I was done, he asked me one question. He asked how long my brother had supposedly been having financial trouble. I said I didn't know. My mother hadn't been specific. He nodded slowly and didn't say anything else about it that night. I should tell you what my husband does for a living because it becomes relevant very quickly and because I think you deserve to have the full picture in a way I didn't when any of this was happening. He is a forensic accountant. He works primarily for law firms and estate attorneys on cases involving financial disputes, fraud, mismanagement, inheritance manipulation, that kind of work. He is extremely good at it. He is the kind of person who, when filling out a form that asks for occupation, writes it plainly, and the people reading it either don't know what it means or they know exactly what it means, and their expression changes. There is no middle ground. I had told my family what he did when we got married 6 years ago. I don't think any of them fully understood it. I think my mother filed it away as something vaguely accounting related and never thought about it again. This would turn out to matter a great deal. The weeks after my mother's announcement were strange. She called me as if nothing had happened. She asked about my week, my job, whether I'd tried a new restaurant she'd seen recommended somewhere. She did not bring up the house again. I answered her questions and kept my voice even and did not bring it up either because I genuinely did not know yet what I was going to do, and I have learned that I make worse decisions when I'm still inside the sharp part of being hurt. My grandfather did not know any of this was happening. As far as he was aware, the estate was still organized the way he'd intended it. My mother handled all of his paperwork, had for years, and he trusted her completely. He was 81, sharp in conversation, slower on paper, the kind of man who would feel ashamed to admit he hadn't read every document before signing it. He signed what his daughter put in front of him, the way a man of his generation trusted family. My brother, meanwhile, had started coming around more. I noticed this because my grandfather mentioned it casually on one of my Tuesday visits. He said my brother had stopped by twice that week, which was more than he'd visited in the previous 6 months combined. My grandfather was pleased. He liked having people around. He liked the noise of it. He didn't question the timing. I mentioned it to my husband that evening. He asked if my brother had ever been listed on any of my grandfather's financial accounts. I said I had no idea. I didn't think so. My husband said he might want to look into a few things. If I was comfortable with that, and that I shouldn't worry yet, he just wanted to understand the full picture. I said okay. He said he'd be discreet. He was always discreet. It was one of the things he was best at. What he found over the following 2 weeks, working quietly at his desk in the evenings after I'd gone to bed, was this. My brother had been added as a joint account holder on my grandfather's primary checking account 7 months earlier. There had been a series of withdrawals since then, not large enough to be immediately alarming, not small enough to be insignificant. The total at the point my husband stopped counting was just over $19,000. The stated reasons on the transfers, where reasons were given at all, were things like home maintenance and medical supplies and, in one case, simply loan. My grandfather's roof had not been touched in 2 years. I knew this because I had been the one asking him about it. I sat with this information for 3 days before I could figure out what to do with it. My mother called during those 3 days. So did my brother once to ask if I could cover one of my grandfather's prescription pickups because he was tied up. I said yes because my grandfather needed his medication, and I drove across town to get it. And I stood in the pharmacy line thinking about $19,000 and a roof that had never been repaired. We were all supposed to have dinner together on a Saturday in April. My grandfather's house, which he still insisted on hosting at because he said it kept him useful. My mother, my brother, his wife, their 2 kids, me, my husband. A regular family dinner. I had been dreading it for days. My husband asked me the morning before if I wanted him to say anything. I said I didn't know. He said he would follow my lead completely. He said, "Tell me what you want the outcome to be, and I'll support whatever that is." I thought about what I wanted. I thought about my grandfather in January wrapped in 3 blankets, too proud to call for help. I thought about my mother saying you'll be fine, like it settled something. I thought about $19,000 and a checking account my grandfather probably didn't know had been changed. I said I wanted my grandfather protected. Everything else was secondary. My husband nodded. He said, okay. Dinner was the particular kind of tense that happens when several people in a room know something is wrong, but only some of them know what. My grandfather was fine, cheerful, telling a long story about something that had happened at his neighbor's house involving a sprinkler and a very startled dog. The kids were loud and the way children are at family dinners, which helped. My mother was careful. My brother was confident in a way I recognized as performance. The slightly too easy laugh, the deliberate warmth, the way he refilled my grandfather's water glass once and made sure everyone noticed. My husband was quiet. He ate. He asked my grandfather about the garden. He listened to the sprinkler story with genuine attention. He sat next to me and twice touched my hand under the table, just briefly. After dinner, when the kids had migrated to the living room and my grandfather was starting to look comfortable and sleepy in his chair, my brother said something that moved things forward faster than I'd expected. He said in a casual way that he and my mother had been talking about the practical side of things, now that the estate plan was updated, and that it might be time to think about my grandfather moving to something smaller and more manageable. Maybe an assisted living facility. He said it with a smile, a reasonable smile, the smile of someone framing a decision as care. My grandfather looked briefly confused. He looked at my mother. He said he hadn't discussed any of this. My mother said they just wanted what was best for him. My grandfather said he was fine in his house. My brother said the upkeep was a lot for one person, and something happened to the room then. I felt it before anyone spoke. My husband set his coffee cup down very carefully and looked at my brother, and there was a quality to the silence that I had never heard from him before, a kind of stillness that was not patience. He said pleasantly that he had actually been looking at the upkeep on the house lately, and he found the numbers interesting. My brother's smile held. My husband said he'd noticed some maintenance expenses that seemed to have been withdrawn from my grandfather's account, and he pulled up his phone, not dramatically, just efficiently, the way he did everything. And he set it on the table face up so that my grandfather could see it. He said, "Could you walk me through what the home maintenance charge in November covered and the one in December?" Because looking at the account activity, the roof inspection that was apparently scheduled never seems to have been paid to a contractor. The room had gone very still. My brother said he didn't think this was the time or place. My husband said with complete calm that he thought it probably was, because my grandfather was sitting right there and it was his money, and he had a right to know how it was being used. My mother said my husband was being accusatory. My husband said he was asking the question. He said, "I do this kind of work professionally, and I want to be very clear that I'm not making an accusation right now. I'm asking for an explanation. If there's a good one, this conversation ends here." My brother did not offer an explanation. What happened, instead, was that my brother's wife touched his arm and looked at him, and he looked at the table, and my grandfather, who had been following all of this with the specific attention of someone who is older and slower, but not confused, said, in a voice that was very quiet and very steady, "How much?" My husband told him. My grandfather was quiet for a long time. He looked at his hands. He looked at my mother. He said, "You knew about this?" My mother said it was complicated. My grandfather said it was complicated. My grandfather said, still quietly, "I trusted you." He didn't say it with anger. He said it like a fact, and that made it worse. In the weeks that followed, things unraveled in the way that financial things unraveled when someone who knows what they're doing starts pulling the right threads. My husband referred my grandfather to an estate attorney he trusted, someone completely outside our family's network, and helped him understand everything that had been done to the account and the estate plan. My grandfather revoked my brother's access to the checking account within 10 days. The estate plan was reviewed. And when my grandfather understood what had been changed and when and in what context, he was clear about what he wanted to redo. He did not redo it in my favor. Not exactly. He said he didn't want it to be about rewarding anyone. He said he wanted it to be about what was right. He left the house to me, but not because I had been robbed, because it had always been his intention, and nobody had asked him if he'd changed his mind. They'd just changed the paperwork. My brother repaid the money. I don't know the full details of how that was arranged. My husband handled part of it professionally and said only that it was resolved, and I believed him. My mother and I did not speak for 2 months. When we did, she did not apologize exactly. She said she had thought she was helping and that she had not understood how far things had gone and that she was sorry I had been hurt. It was not a complete apology. I accepted it anyway, not because it was enough, but because she was my mother. And my grandfather was still alive, and I'd watched enough of these situations, to my husband's work and to my own family, to know that the alternative to an imperfect reconciliation is usually just a longer version of being alone together. I do not know what my brother and I are now. We are polite at the events we both attend. We are careful. There is a version of this story where that eventually becomes something more, and a version where it doesn't, and I have stopped trying to predict which one. What I think about, more than any of it, is the day I sat on my grandfather's porch about 3 weeks after everything came out, the two of us with coffee in the late afternoon, the same porch where he told me when I was 12 that the house would be mine someday. He didn't reference that conversation. He talked about the garden, about a book he was reading, about the neighbor's dog, which had apparently had another incident with a sprinkler. But at one point he reached over and patted the back of my hand, once, and he said, "You showed up." That was all he said? I've carried that sentence with me like something I want to keep from breaking. The thing about being the person who shows up is that nobody hands you a certificate for it. There is no formal acknowledgement. The people who benefit from your presence come to expect it so naturally that they stop seeing it, which is exactly how it becomes possible for someone to look at everything you've done and decide that you'll be fine without being compensated for it. Your liability becomes the reason it costs you nothing in the eyes of people who are not paying attention. But someone was paying attention. He had been for 81 years, and he knew the difference between a person who showed up and a person who showed up when it mattered for themselves. My husband understood this before I did. He understood it the night I came home from my mother's kitchen table with my hands in my lap and my voice even, and my eyes dry. He set down the mail and he looked at me, and he did not say, "You'll be fine." He made dinner. He listened. He asked one careful question and spent 2 weeks finding the answer without once making it about himself. I think that's the thing about people who are good at what they do. They don't announce it. They don't sit across from you at a family dinner and explain their credentials. They just pull up a phone, ask a calm question, and let the numbers speak. Because numbers, unlike the people in that room, do not have a reason to protect anyone. My grandfather still lives in his house. He turned 82 last month and I brought him pie, and we sat on the porch, and he fixed nothing because the railing is fine and so is the roof, which was inspected and repaired in May, paid for properly by people who were accountable for it. Some Tuesday afternoons, I still drive over for no reason in particular. He's usually in the garden or watching the news. He offers me coffee. We don't always talk about anything important, but I still show up. And I think that matters more than I was ever told to believe it did, until someone finally said it out loud.